here. Bop, bop, bop.
In our last update, we covered the month of April of this year and Nick's efforts at milling lumber out of the trees we cut down last fall. In this one, we're moving forward to May, still just a little bit behind real time, but showing how Nick put together the steel pieces, which will make up the vertical pieces of the frame.
So last you guys saw, I was hard at work milling lumber. That's always a push. That's always a big physical effort and seems like it always takes longer than you want it to. So it was a push to get that done, a push to get out of town. Of course, worked hard while I was out of town and then came back and it was time to start steel. But there was some housekeeping to do, some home and property projects to check off the list before I could really sit down and concentrate on steel stuff. We moved the solar panels to the roof of the house. We completed our erosion control project right next to the house, which was erosion cloth and grass seed and whatnot. And also, there was still a lot of garden work to do.
This is not the year of what we call our impossible farm. In fact, the next step for what I call the impossible farm is the shop, because we're going to capture water from the shop roof, which will then water our growing areas. We're just doing large areas kind of penciled in, and we'll be shading in the colors and the details in future years.
So, lots of regular homesteady type stuff before I could get into steel fabrication. The way that this building is being constructed is it's a product of me looking at the resources available to me and seeing how I can arrange them to be the thing that I want.
This shop is timber frame, but it is also steel. It's kind of half and half timber frame and steel. The reason for that is that Nick uses the materials that he has.
I had come into this this pile of 6-inch structural steel tube quite a few years ago. I've used it for a number of things, including our spiral staircase, some little bits and pieces on the house, but always knew that it would be a great start to a big structure, a big building. And I knew the next big building we were going to want is a workshop. So this pile of steel, the 6x6 structural tube, sat around waiting for me to come up with a way to use it in a building. By the time I got to the pile and sort of decided on the size of shop that was going to be useful to me, it ended up that the pile was only going to provide enough material for uprights, for posts of the building. And I figured that was the best place to use them. It allows me to do material racks on the walls. It allows me to really have a really robust building that's capable of carrying quite the load, both in storage and in snow load. So it just made sense for them to go there. It's a lot of work to produce a piece like that with sort of limited tooling. So a lot of what I was doing during steel work was coming up with ways to do this sort of heavy fabrication with the limited tools that we have here. The one thing about working with sort of limited tooling or, consumer type tooling without a big shop facility, without a lot of materials handling equipment, I have to be creative about how I use my time and how I use my energy in order to still reach that same level of precision that, say, a bigger fabrication shop could get. So I like to build jigs because it takes the interpretation process out of repetition, if that makes any sense. It really just distills it down to the doing part and not those little tolerances that can really screw you up. So like when I'm drilling all of these holes in the steel tube, in all that was 336 holes in the tube, and I want those holes to not only line up across the building, but even just on opposite sides of that tube. I want those to be right on, and I don't want to have to interpret a pencil tick mark every single time. 336 interpretations of a pencil tick mark is going to get off. So when I built that jig, in order to slide over it, do one little layout and have all the holes land where they need to land, that saves me time and it increases my accuracy. Steelwork it's pretty different from woodworking as far as the environment goes, as far as my immediate work environment. I really can't have anybody else around. There's hot sparks flying. It's very loud. A lot of little safety concerns. Even the dog can't hang out with me. It's too loud, and the light from the welder will cause people to go blind. So I can't just tell the dog, don't look or cover your eyes. So I got to send her inside. Same with the kids, they just can't be around it. Because it's loud and it's sparky and it's dangerous looking, everybody else goes away. And I find the loud and the sparky and just the mode of working with steel really relaxing. It can only go as fast as the machines are able to go. I can't push it, I can't hurry. The drill press is only gonna make that 3/4 inch hole so fast. I can't hang on it and make it just rock right through there. The welder is not gonna heat up the metal any faster. I just have to wait for it and let those machines do their thing. So I find it pretty relaxing in that I just can't hurry. I got to slow down and make it right.
I actually like watching Nick do steel. He's been doing some kind of steel work since we met when we were just in our late teens and early 20s, and he was building scenery for stage plays. I actually kind of like it that I can use the camera to protect my eyes while he's welding. I never could look right at the welding light, but I can look at my camera looking at the welding light, so it gives me a good excuse to watch him work. As Nick was making progress on the steelwork, I was really getting my feet under me, Part of that is just my own personal schedule. I always have a harder time in early spring. It's my scheduled personal hurricane as we're coming out of the winter and trying to get the ball rolling for garden projects and everything else that happens on the homestead in the spring and summer. But it also is a matter of the building process. It is super intimidating to think a building is going to come out of those trees. It's less intimidating to think a building is going to come out of those cut beams, but it's much less intimidating to think a building will be stood up out of these finished steel pieces. So each piece that Nick was able to add to the pile added to my sense of confidence and got me a little bit more relaxed and ready to see the next stage completed.
All right, so this is the pile of steel parts that are going into the workshop. Each post is about 9 feet tall. At the top it has a big C-channel bracket, and that's going to receive the long plate that ties the long side of the shop together. Towards the outside of the building, there's these 4 plates. These are going to hold 2x4 wall purlins. So I'll have horizontal boards running the length of the building, and on those horizontal boards I can do board and batten siding vertically. That's the idea with that. This bottom end is polished clean, all the paint and rust removed, so that I can weld it to my piers after they're all up and adjusted and happy. The other feature of these is that they have, I've built in cross bracing along that long wall. So at the top of each one, there's this plate, which gets one of these bolted to it. This is just a piece of flat bar. It's got a hole in it. It gets bolted right there. And then if you can imagine the other piece coming in from its neighboring post, this end gets threaded into this little bracket here. And so what that gives me is an adjustable cross brace. So I have 3 bays, 1, 2, 3, 3 bays that have this big rigid cross brace in it. And that'll keep the building nice and rigid along the length of it, which is important because the other thing that I'm doing with these posts, if you can see those holes every 6 inches, those holes are to hold shelving for material. So these walls will be pretty well loaded down, so we want them really well braced and solid. So we're about 4 weeks out from the building going up. We have help on the way. And I'm feeling a little tired, honestly, but also optimistic because some of the biggest, nastiest projects are behind us. I still have timber framing in front of us, which is exciting. It's a little carrot that I'm dangling in front of myself to push through some of the boring stuff, including moving this hunk of junk over to its permanent home. This is our oldest building here. It's been at a couple different locations on the property, but it's going to become the permanent tool room for the shop. So it's a little pre-addition to the shop building. It's a place to house all my tools while I build, but it's also going to keep tools out of the shop so that it doesn't honk up my workspace. So that's what I'm moving on to next. Come on back and check it out.
And after a couple of months of accumulating bits and pieces and really getting the momentum going, at this point, we have 1 month until the frame raising and we are gonna go.
Rainbow! Rainbow! Rainbow!
Both of them! Wow, that's getting very bright.
I love it. wonder where the end of it lands.
I'm Nick. Thanks for watching.
It's a rainbow! A rainbow! Bone. A bone. Teeny bone. What kind is this?
I don't know, honey.
It looks like a nose. This is a nose.
Okay, can we keep going, honey?
I found someone's nose.